I want to walk you through a little bit on the last part of bone growth. So we talked about how the bones form in an embryo. We talked about how your bones grow in length. Now we're going to talk about bone remodeling, which is happening all the time. It happens in children and it also happens in adults, even when they're done growing in length. So bone remodeling just means that your bone is constantly being reabsorbed, and that just means broken down and added anywhere where you need it. The cells that are reabsorbing and adding bone are the osteoblasts. Remember, the B for blast means build. And osteoclasts, remember CD, they destroy. So we say these are our remodeling units. These are the cells that are breaking the bone down and building it up. Now, in terms of bone remodeling, this happens our whole life, and it does not happen uniformly. So different areas of your skeleton will be broken down faster and added back faster than other areas. So here's a great example. This is looking at the femur. The femur is your thigh bone. This is the longest, strongest bone in the body. The shaft of the femur, the diaphysis, will last you a lifetime. The distal epiphyses, this one down here at the bottom, that makes up your knee joint, right? That one gets remodeled, so it gets broken down and built back up essentially every 5 to 6 months. Why? Why are you constantly breaking down and building that back up?
You're constantly moving on.
Yeah, wear and tear. So through wear and tear, your body is going to break that distal epiphyses down, build it back up. So I want to walk you through bone remodeling sort of from building the bone up and breaking it down. So bone deposition is the buildup of bone. We're depositing bone. These are our osteoblasts. Remember, blasts build. And this is going to occur anytime your bone is broken. Okay, so you break your bone, osteoblasts will lay down new bone and fix that break. This is also going to happen anytime you need extra strength in that bone. Now, in order for you to be able to build up more bone or heal a fracture, you have to have a good diet. You have to have enough protein, vitamins A, C, D, calcium. Those are all incredibly important. Bone resorption is the destruction of bone. We're going to reabsorb it. And this is accomplished by osteoclasts. Remember, CD. Clasts destroy. And when osteoclasts destroy your bone, how they do that is these cells will release lysosomal enzymes. Now that term lyse means to break apart. So these are enzymes that digest or break apart the organic matrix of the bone. Okay, so that would be like the extracellular matrix, the organic matrix. It gives the bone a structure, but doesn't make it super hard. And then osteoclasts also release acids. And the acids are what liquefy that inorganic matrix, which are the hydroxyapatites, the calcium salt. So the acid helps to liquefy the calcium in your bone so that you can put it right in your bloodstream. This is typically, when we remodel our bone, when we destroy it, we are typically destroying the bone so that we can get calcium into our bloodstream. So remember, it's easy to think of why we would ever need to build our bone. Oh, you've broken it, or you're getting bigger and taller. But when you think of destroying bone, it's kind of a little backwards of a concept. You are destroying your bone so that you can get blood calcium, because we need calcium for everything. So there's actually two things that will regulate bone remodeling. So your ability to destroy and build up your bone is regulated by two different things. One of them is called the hormonal mechanism. This is the blood calcium level. The other one is the stress you put on the bone. So let's talk about the calcium level first, the hormonal mechanism. The reason we call this the hormonal mechanism is because hormones are involved, okay? Remember, we need calcium for everything. So if calcium is too high, you release a hormone that tells you to store it in your bone. If calcium is too low, you release a hormone that tells you to destroy your bone and get more calcium into your blood. So it's driven by hormones. So that's why we call it the hormonal mechanism. Again, we need calcium for everything. Anything from muscles contracting to nerves firing to cells dividing to glands secreting. We need it for every physiological function. Blood clotting, all of that. So what happens in your body when you have extra calcium in your blood? Your body goes, woohoo, I got more than I need. Let's store it for later. And you're gonna release a hormone called calcitonin. This is a hormone that comes from the thyroid gland. It sits in the neck here. So when blood calcium levels are elevated, the thyroid releases calcitonin. Calcitonin tells osteoblasts to build more bone and add that calcium into your bone. And it makes your bones nice and strong, and you're storing the calcium for later if you need it. If blood calcium levels drop, remember you need it for all this stuff up here. So if blood calcium levels fall, you will release a different hormone. You will release a hormone called parathyroid hormone, PTH for short. It is named for the gland that secretes it, which is the parathyroid gland. The parathyroid gland sits sort of sandwiched within the thyroid. So the thyroid is like a little butterfly-shaped gland up in the neck, and the parathyroid kind of sits behind it and around it. So the parathyroid will release parathyroid hormone, and that's going to cause osteoclasts to start breaking your bone down. And you're going to liquefy that calcium, and it's going to go into your blood, and you're going to raise your blood calcium level. Okay, so again, this is why we call it the hormonal mechanism, because there are hormones that are involved here. I'm going to star this slide because you need to know the names of those hormones. Okay, I will ask you questions on your exam. You know, what hormone gets released when your blood calcium level is elevated? And you would tell me, oh, that's calcitonin from the thyroid gland. Or I might ask you, what hormone gets released when blood calcium levels drop? You would tell me, oh, that's the parathyroid hormone from the parathyroid gland. So make sure you know the names of those hormones. Here's that teeter-totter example that your book uses. So if calcium levels drop, parathyroid hormone releases, or the parathyroid gland releases the parathyroid hormone. This picture is showing you the thyroid gland, that butterfly-shaped gland here. And you can see in yellow, that's the parathyroid gland. It kind of sits behind and within the thyroid. So these little yellow glands, those are releasing the parathyroid hormone. Osteoclasts start breaking your bone down, your blood calcium levels go up. Okay. But I told you, I'll skip back to this picture. So I told you that there's two reasons why you would ever remodel your bone. One has to do with calcium levels, right? Hormonal mechanism. The other is stress on the bone. So let's talk about that. There's a law called Wolff's Law, and it says that a bone is going to grow and remodel based on the force and the demands that you place on it. So we have a lot of different observations that support this law, right? I think I told you these earlier. Handedness. If you are right-handed, the bones of your right hand, because you use this one more, are bigger than the ones in your left hand. Like my wedding ring, for example, I have little fingers. My wedding ring's like a size 4 or 4.5, it's teensy, fits on my left hand just fine. If I try to take that and put it on my right ring finger, it doesn't even come close to fitting. This ring finger is a whole size bigger than my left ring finger. Why? Because I use my right hand more. My bones are bigger. They have remodeled because I'm using this hand more. Okay, this is my dominant hand. Curved bones. A great example of this one would be like the clavicle. The clavicle is your collarbone. Clavicle has a curve to it. So if it breaks, it'll push outward, not inward. You're gonna find trabeculae. Remember, these are basically like the bars of bone in our spongy bone. Remember, I told you, I think of them as sort of like if you have a bridge and you put pillars under the bridge to make it stronger. Trabeculae are like those pillars. You're gonna have these where you have more stress to make the bone stronger. And you're gonna have big bony projections anywhere where you have heavy muscles attaching. So a good example is like on the femur, you have this big projection on the back of your femur where your gluteal muscles attach. Because as those muscles pull on the bone, that's force on the bone and the bone is remodeling. It's growing away from itself at that point. This is another example. This is showing a tennis player. This would be if they did like a cross section through the humerus. This would be the serving arm, and this would be the non-serving arm. And you can see how much thicker the bone of the serving arm would be. So for bone remodeling, it's two things that remodel your bone. It's the hormonal loop, it's blood calcium, but it's also stress on the bone. So what we say is that the hormonal loop determines if remodeling is going to happen at all. The mechanical stress will determine where remodeling happens. So let's say that I'm a ballerina, okay? And I am up on point shoes. You know what those are, right? Point shoes. Where's the stress for a ballerina when they're on point shoes? Toes, ankles, feet, right? So let's say as a ballerina, my blood calcium level is high. Would I remodel my bone if I have extra calcium? What am I going to do? Will I destroy my bone or add to it? You'll add to it. So if your blood calcium is elevated, you're going to add to your bone, right? That's if it's happening at all. Where will I add to my bone? Where I need it. And if I'm a ballerina, it's going in my feet and my toes and my ankles, right? Okay, now let's say I'm a ballerina and I'm not eating well at all. And my blood calcium level is really low. Will I remodel my bone? What do you do when calcium is low? So you remodel your bone, but in this case, you have to destroy your bone. Okay, so yeah, you're going to remodel your bone if calcium is low. You'll destroy it. Where will you destroy it? The last place you need it. So as a ballerina, if I'm on point shoes and my blood calcium is low, I'm not pulling bone out of my ankles and my feet, right? It'll be from somewhere else. So we say the hormonal loop, if calcium is high or low, determines whether you remodel at all and what kind of remodeling happens. And the stress on your bone determines where the remodeling happens. Does that make sense? Now let's say I'm a ballerina and my blood calcium level is perfect. It's not too high and it's not too low. Will I remodel my bone? Nope, because I don't have extra to store and I don't need to break my bone down, okay? So calcium determines whether and when it happens. Mechanical stress determines where it happens in your body.